On this episode of the Gray Box Podcast, we are talking with a few people that have strong opinions. And the reason I wanted to set up what I'm calling kind of a round table is so that, number one, you can see people with similar points of view can also disagree, and that it's important to talk and to express each other's opinions and viewpoints without being put into a box. So we kind of go through a lot of topics. I plan to do this regularly. I hope to do it regularly, wherein we can have multiple people kind of interacting and talking about what's going on in politics, in just society, and in kind of daily life, how we're affected by it, what's going on, what we're doing, trying to express points of view that will win arguments, that will help illustrate people's points of view without really trying to stay out of the conspiracy zone. You know, it's easy to get down that road, but try to stay out of it. Of course, you know, you'll touch some of those things and you'll kind of put your feelers in some of those things, but really try to stick with what reality is. And so this is the first of many, I hope, where we can illustrate points of view, people that agree on a lot of things and also disagree on some things. So if you want to follow any of these individuals, I'll have them in the notes of the show, and I will have them on the podcast, all of their social media, and any way to get a hold of them and interact with them will be in the description of the podcast as well. So have a listen or view it as well. And remember to subscribe to the Gray Box Podcast. And also, you can follow me at The Real Darren Johnson on Instagram. Just to kind of stay up to date, I traditionally try to make some posts in regards to the podcasts. Hope you enjoy. Have a listen.
Getting back to the grind. I post a picture of me doing a handstand in front of the Washington Monument, I'm at the Lincoln Memorial, but the Washington Monument's in the back on my business page because it's a handstand, whatever, cool. And then on my personal, these are Insta stories. I have a picture of me on the lawn, by the Capitol, and I'm throwing up the peace sign. And I wake up the next morning and there's 3,200 views on the picture. BLM Coast, businesses, complete strangers, every other wellness and yoga studio, those pictures, red arrow to my face, white supremacist, Nazi terrorist, insurrectionist, boycott her business now. It goes on to, here's the number to the New Hampshire DOJ. It goes on to, here's the number of the FBI, Department of Justice, and, had cops come to my place of business, 4 different cops, 3 different days, to do compliance checks and to, the warning of being arrested on an unconstitutional criminal misdemeanor and getting fined $2,000 a day.
For what though? For posting a picture, or for going to the, like, what for?
For not following the New Hampshire executive order for quarantining. And she's like, the other day that I talked to, people were like narking on me because I'm the epitome of cancel culture right now. I mean, the local paper, I was front page.
I think you and Jordan for sure are like being canceled as much as possible.
I was literally on the front page of the paper stating like, local yoga studio owner issued a warning after Trump DC rally. So it's like the sloppiest article ever. It's like, is this about Trump?
Especially because you're a yoga studio. Like, you don't fit into that box. You don't fit into the Trump box. You should be at Whole Foods eating granola bars, and
exactly.
You shouldn't be a Trump supporter.
And that's the whole mission of like why I'm here in this lifetime, is to break like the bullshit paradigms of like, you do this, so you must be this, and like boxing yourself into these things, which are just man-made illusions to further divide and separate us. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I took, my last class that I taught was last Wednesday because I needed a fucking break. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the volume was just insane. So I went back to work this morning and, getting my footing. I've met some great people over the past week, or I've helped launch a website, a funding campaign, talked to 3 different lawyers. I've talked to Corky Messner, who's running for Senate. Just all the lawyers are like, yeah, defamation's a lengthy road. And unless you got 30 grand and these people have assets, it's not really worth your time because it's freedom of speech. I'm like, I mean, you guys, I talked to the FBI. Like, these people.
How'd that go?
So after I talked to Corky Messner, who's running, he suggested that I call the FBI, the local FBI, and say like, hey, X, Y, and Z people are after me. They're making these claims. They're wrong. So like, his biggest thing was, did you go into the Capitol? Did you go into the Capitol? Did you go into the Capitol? No, I didn't. Trace my phone. You'll see I did not go into the Capitol. So I'm sovereign in that truth because I know it to be what it is. You know what I'm saying? Haven't heard from him since.
But it appears that phone service was difficult there. Maybe they can't track where you were.
Yeah.
Maybe they can position you where.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's
true,
and again, it's like, well, I don't really trust anybody at this point. You know what I'm saying? Especially up there in a sense.
Right. Right. I mean, look what they did to freaking General Flynn. If the FBI at the top is bad, you have to imagine that there's some jokers
I mean,
at the bottom.
the easiest thing to say is we've completely shut down. I don't care who you are and what you believe. I think Donald Trump's a tool a lot of the time, but you shut him down completely in social media. Like, so obviously, again, back to conspiracy theorists, like, it's all kind of like, it's not conspiracies anymore.
Right.
It just isn't. So it's hard to trust the top, like you're saying.
Because the MSM has pervertedly portrayed this inverted fake reality that's really got people thinking 2 + 2 is 5. They've done a great job.
Yeah, they've done a really good job.
Yeah.
So,
unfortunately.
So what are you doing now? I mean, obviously, you're kind of getting back to it, and you've probably got a lot of good support, though, right? I mean, I'm sure you've got a lot of people that are like in your corner and supportive.
Massive waves of support, from complete strangers. I'm writing into the editor. How can I help you? Just people wanting to help in any way that they can. I mean, I've had people from social media reach out from New Zealand, LA, Florida,
Amazing.
Memphis, DC. Hey, I saw somebody was posting about you, so.
That's amazing.
At this point, I'm like, let's take the word Trump out of it, because to be frank with you, if you want to label me as a Trumper, to me, all that means to me is I'm a free thinker and I'm a truth seeker. So if that's what a Trumper is, by all means, label me as that. You know what I'm saying?
I think what's important, I think it's a really good point. Because all of us probably have different viewpoints on Donald Trump. What I think needs to be removed from what I think we do, and Jordan and I talked about this, we give them too much credit, any of these politicians. We put them on a pedestal and we just lift them up, and then all of a sudden we're kind of put into this box like you're a Trump person, or you're a Biden person, you're a this person, you're that person. Even if you believe in their policies, we kind of have to get away a little bit from putting them up so high on a pedestal that no matter what they say, it's truth. No matter what they do, it's perfect. We kind of have to get away. I think younger generation, kind of like all of us, need to kind of get away from that mentality. And I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, I mean, agreed.
Well, I say if it's okay with you guys, because I have to jet by. Hold on, let me see what time I have to leave by. Darren, do you want to kind of go over exactly what you're thinking? You wrote some notes in the outline.
Yeah, so here's one thing that I think I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on. I've had a lot of conversations with people that really... So here's the thing. I think it was 64 cases were thrown out for the, the attorneys for Trump, saying the election was rigged, stolen, whatever, and they were all basically thrown out. So what do you say to that? 64 court cases weren't really heard. I mean, it's hard to say that every single one of them is in the bag for the other party. So we can kind of dismiss that because that can't be the case. I don't believe it can be the case. So what do you say to that?
Do you want to talk about that in the thing, or do you want to talk about it now?
Let's talk about it now.
No. Oh.
Oh, what do you want to talk?
Are we recording?
Yeah, it's recording now. But I'll just
so
cut it up to
so we're
whatever.
going.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. I didn't know.
Oh, so I mean, I guess the first thing I would say was a lot of the people that were doing it was not all Trump. It wasn't all like his actual team who was making wise decisions about, you guys have seen A Law-Abiding Citizen with Gerard Butler, right? That movie where he's like, it's not what's true, it's what you can prove in court. So like that already says that like whether or not they can prove it is not the definition of whether or not it occurred, right? But that I'm not saying that is where I want to land on. What I'm saying is that when you look at the vast amount of cases that were brought forward, they weren't intelligently gone over for hours and hours and hours and hours and then perfectly placed into the system to say, we would like to have this because this is a winning lawsuit. It was, here's a lawsuit, here's a lawsuit, here's a lawsuit. And not all of them were even Trump team. A lot of them were about the Trump stuff and about election rigging, but only 4 of them were ever actually put through from the Trump team. Right. And so one of them, which was in Michigan, they got what they wanted. So they withdrew it themselves. And then the other 3 were the only 3 that mattered. And then you had the Texas one where Texas basically said, here's all of the ways that this was wrong for it to have occurred. And when they brought it to the Supreme Court, which is the biggest one, the Supreme Court said, essentially, it was as if you videotaped one of your neighbors hurting the other neighbor and then took it to the police and said, look, my neighbor hurt the other neighbor. And they said, you weren't hurt. Why are you bringing this to us? You can't bring this to us. So we need your neighbor to come say something. That's what the Supreme Court did. They didn't even look at the evidence of the punching of the neighbor. They were just like, well, you're not allowed to bring this to us. And which makes sense. And it makes me think it was stupid for them to have done it that way. Right. But at the same time, they didn't look at the merits of it. With 2,000 signed affidavits of people from all walks of life, conservative, Democrat, doesn't vote, whatever, of them saying, I, with my eyeballs, saw this occur. There's enough there that makes me go, you think all those people were paid? Like you said, you don't think that all 64 of the cases could all have been in cahoots? Sure, I'm with you. But there is also quite a bit of justice that's happening now for election fraud. We just saw with the one woman that Project Veritas brought in when they had the undercover video of her or whatever. She just got prosecuted today, like 3 days ago. She finally got brought in or whatever for doing it, and everybody was like, "That was fake. That was fake." But so like you have to look at that, and then for the Supreme Court to not even have. In a lot of the court cases that were thrown out, some of their answers for the reason they were thrown out was literally, we don't have enough time. And that's just like, okay, I think we should make some time. It seems important. But, I mean, I'm with you on a lot of
the fact that Phil Klein's case didn't even get into court is just ridiculous. I mean, you have a truck driver that drove a truck from New York to Pennsylvania. The truck driver did not vote, so he's not a Trump supporter. And he said that in his truck, in his trailer, he had at least minimum 120,000 ballots that he drove from New York to Pennsylvania, drops a load. I think they dropped a load off in Philadelphia. And then, he was supposed to go to Lancaster, but then, no one came out. And I mean, if you just listen to the interviews, and that's why, I talked to so many. The issue at the end of the day, though, is that the reason why the Supreme Court, and all of the judges could just say no standing, is because the media and big tech own the narrative. And so like you have these 2 echo chambers, and you have all the information that we're hearing, which is everything that we want to hear. And then you have the other side's information. Like, for instance, like in my, I have a family member, I'm not going to say who, but I have a very close family member in my family that thinks I'm, she's complete opposite of me, and how you have me and my sister is the person I was going to say, but me and my sister raised by the same parents. And I'm not even saying what she believes is wrong or what I'm believing is right. But the issue is that you can have two people raised in the same household. They have slightly different beliefs and follow different people and literally believe 100% sincerely that the other person is completely wrong. And the reason why is because big tech has created this divide of these echo chambers where we are not getting all the information. And I'm even saying that for our side as well, where we've been sucked into a lot of bullshit as well, excuse my language, but that is what's happening. And so when it comes to, I watched every hearing. I haven't worked, honestly, since November 4th. I've been so glued. And Ross knows this because Ross has been trying to get my ass trained because we work together. And I've been so glued and I've watched every hearing. I've read all the Peter Navarro reports. And when you read it, it's so blatant. It's so easy to understand. But big tech has done a really good job of dividing us, where now we're at the point where and this isn't just what just happened in the last month. This is what's happened over the last 4 years, because this has been a complete buildup to where now anyone that's on the right, or if you're on the, or the opposite side of you automatically disregard them as whether it's a conspiracy theorist or an anti-American or a racist or a communist. And so we have these beliefs, we're set in them. And so it's so hard for us to even listen to each other, to the point where a driver from Pennsylvania or from New York can drive over ballots. The ballots get taken and stolen. He to this day doesn't know where the truck is, and it's not in the media, or people don't believe it, which is just it's insane. And the guy didn't vote Trump. And so the reason why this, in my personal opinion, the reason why they were able to get away with this is because there is such a divide of information, of beliefs, that no matter what either side would say, or no matter what an attorney or a witness could say, oh, you're a Trump supporter, or you're saying something in support of Trump, disregard, not true, conspiracy. And that has really what's held the narrative up, throughout this entire case. Because I've talked, I went back to Los Angeles. Sorry, I'm talking your guys' ears off. I went back to Los Angeles. I was there 6 weeks ago for a week, and I talked to a couple buddies, and these are some of my best friends, and they're liberal, but they see me, we hear each other, and I'm telling them, did you see the video from Georgia? What video from Georgia? Did you hear about the truck driver that drove over from Pennsylvania? No. Did you stuff that is we all know? They never even heard of it. It hasn't even crossed their social media page. So you can't even blame the left for not even knowing what the truth is, because they're not even seeing it pop up on their newsfeed.
I think the big problem is we as Americans collectively, it's that instant gratification. It's what's the weather? What's today? What's the news? Oh, okay. And we go about our day because we're glorifying busyness in a sense. And it's we've lost that. I mean, I know we really haven't, but we've lost that sense of individuality where it's I want to dig on my own. Let me see it. Let me hear it. Let me experience it. For example, if one of your friends says oh, that new restaurant is disgusting. It's there are people who would be well, then I'm not going. But it's well, okay, thanks. But I want to go try it myself. You know what I'm saying? Right.
100%.
Darren,
what do you think, Darren?
Well, I think that, I was thinking of, what's that Dr. Epstein? Is that his last name? Unfortunate last name.
Robert Epstein.
Robert Epstein. You know what I'm saying? It's a really unfortunate last name for the dude.
It's kind of like when you're first, it's what's your name? Dick. Oh.
Yeah, you're oh.
Why would your mom give you that?
Can you just be Richard? Can we just call you Richard instead? If you read and dig into some of his stuff and some of his analysis and his studies, it really opens up kind of a gateway of okay, there is clear bias out there, and we're clearly being persuaded down a path, no matter what we are. I try to follow.
For everybody listening who doesn't know who Robert Epstein is, he was the person that they brought before Congress, I think it was, to explain how Google is doing election meddling and how the algorithms of Google cause people to think differently. By if you type in the word airplanes and they want you to think airplanes are bad, the first 15 suggestions will be how many people died in airplanes, airplanes crash, airplane this and that. So you think the way of the buffalo, which is I'm going the same way everybody else is. Apparently airplanes are dangerous. And so it makes you think a certain way. So he was saying that in the Hillary Trump election that more than 2 million votes were affected by Google's algorithms alone. And he came and he said that in 2016, and he said it's only going to get worse. So anyway, go ahead.
He voted Hillary.
Yeah, he voted Hillary.
Yeah. Well, he is a supporter too. He actually donated and has always donated to Democrats. The thing that's interesting that I found alarming that he said was, I think it was Ted Cruz that said, would you agree that these tech companies are putting forth millions and millions and billions of dollars towards this effort to point people in a certain direction in terms of politics? Obviously, we know they do in terms of like advertisements and things like that. And he corrected him and said that, let me just correct you with all due respect, they spend zero. They don't have to spend money. They just put an algorithm in and direct you a certain way. It's not like they are the end all be all. So they don't have to spend millions and billions of dollars to try to get us to push it. All they have to do is just
part of the narrative.
If you're in a predominantly Republican area, or vice versa, just withhold those things and point this group into another. So anyway, I think I really think it's important for everyone to try to see both sides. I know it's super hard, but follow people you disagree with. Like I follow AOC, and I think she's bonkers. I really do. Like the things that she says, I'm thinking, but I mean, she's got a tremendous platform, and for her side, she makes a really good argument on a lot of things. I think when we view it, we think it's ridiculous, but when you're on that side, you think it's just gold, it's perfect, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think to the mainstream media, I don't know if you probably saw Don Lemon, where he he actually called everybody that voted for Trump supporters of the KKK, white supremacists, all that stuff. And so that's where we are. Like that is the direction we've headed. And it's all in now.
Have you guys heard of Operation Mockingbird? Have you ever heard of that? So Operation Mockingbird is something that the CIA launched in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. I can't remember when it is. There's giant articles about it online that you can go read from reporters who dug into it all. But basically, the CIA brought 400 reporters from all of the different news stations to the CIA, trained them, and then used them for like couple years or whatever to create a narrative inside of the people's understanding of what they wanted to do. Right. So the CIA was projecting and was telling these reporters and these news reporters how to speak so that basically they would be able to give the information to the public in the way that was beneficial to whatever the CIA's goals were. Right. And so this is conspiracy land 5 years ago, but then you can look it up and see it for yourself what it is now and what they actually did. Well, so when you look at some of the components that they use, a lot of it has to do with repetition. It has to do with using humor as a way to kind of bypass people's objective. You know, kind of like if you laugh and go, well, we all know that, I'm not going to take my black friends to a Trump party. I don't want them getting killed, right? And then everybody and all of you start laughing, and the people on the panel laugh. And then whoever's watching just goes, oh, okay, you're in agreement. Everybody agrees with that. Okay, so that must be a common trend. Well, I'm going to walk the way of the buffalo and agree with that too. And so there's all these techniques that they've established over the years of how to portray that there's absolute confidence in something. And then they've just taken that to the umph degree in all of the media aspects. But then you have social media that does it again. And then you have Google, which is the way to gain information, withholding and pumping information into the way to go research things. It's almost hopeless. It's almost hopeless if you're a person who's came with a blank slate to not leave with an entirely tainted view. And so you have people that are going, well, it's a private business. They can do what they want. Well, actually, I don't agree with that 100%, because when you're starting to affect the direction of nations, there's a different accountability that's supposed to happen. And we have to have people that are witnesses to the truth, that want to be honest. And I think the Section 230 kind of gives a little bit too much freedom, especially when you're controlling what can and can't be said. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, think about, you have Google, and Microsoft tried to start Bing. And even Microsoft, a billion-dollar, I don't know, it might be $1 trillion, billion-dollar company, tried to create a competitor to Google and could not. Like, who the hell uses Bing? Nobody. And so, like, when you have a company that is that powerful, and they're not just a search engine, they literally control and filter what we see on the internet for everything.
Ads, they control servers, they control
all of that. And you know what's even scarier? Wikipedia. Because Wikipedia we go to for our history of a person, and they literally edit, I was reading all these reports, about a lot of the people that Biden's been picking for, his cabinet members, and they've been scrubbing all the crap, anything negative off their Wikipedia page. And the fact that they can actually do that is, really, there's an attack on history, which actually leads to my point. I actually posted this in my Telegram group this morning, how I believe it was on November 2nd, Trump, put together an executive order for a commission.
1776.
Yes, the 1776 commission. Because what's been happening ever since, I believe it's like the I can't remember the exact date. If you guys know, it's like the 1920s or 30s. All the history books have been made after that. They've been changing the history, changing the how our faith and religion and the Christian values and what the founding fathers believed. And so what Trump did, and he's seeing this in what's happening in our schools and our education. They are changing our history so that we don't know who our identity and our true values are. And that's really, I think, what the core of everything is America doesn't have a value. And you get the race, the white nationalist thing, you get the race thing. It's like, we're white supremacists or whatever. And it's like, if you think about it, racism has been going on since Genesis with the Jews, with Egypt and Pharaoh. This race is a thing that's been going on forever. And let alone you have America. You go to a nation like Colombia, and everyone's Colombian. You go to Mexico, everyone's Mexican. You go to America, and you have thousands of cultures, thousands of races, thousands of religions, and it's like all be in peace and all live together. It's like if we don't have one value, and if we don't know our true values as a nation and what our founding fathers set for us, as all of us as immigrants, like, hey, this is what we believe, this is what we stand for as a nation. When you take that away, you have chaos. And that's literally what's been happening over especially in the last 50 years, where you're seeing our education in colleges, in the curriculum books that they're teaching children. They are planning over the next 4 years to teach our children that our founding fathers were racist, and it's causing us to hate the people that actually created the Constitution, which is why eventually they're just going to throw the Constitution out in the first place.
And it's so evidently clear, and it's that perpetuating of the narrative where let's keep saying it, for us, you said this, like, let's keep saying it, and eventually it'll be true, right? Eventually it'll catch on. But again,
Goebbels, good old Goebbels.
Yeah. It's like the illusion of choice between big tech, pharma, Hollywood, academia, and MSM. They're all in the swamp pushing the same delusional narrative. So it's like, how the hell do we bring the truth or the light to the truth? And this is what we're in right now.
Well, I think your sentence is that's the point of it. If you can sit somebody down and go, in what world does China, Hollywood, Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the DNC, and Antifa and Black Lives Matter and the NBA and the NFL have the exact same ideology? Yeah. What vacuum does that happen in if it's not being manufactured somewhere?
And the same words. We've all seen clips of even just news stations. They're clever in the sense where they pick the same words. Like, it's very dangerous, and they'll all say it, whatever. And it's like, how are people not catching on? It's like a literal echo chamber. Come on,
you go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, one of the things I think about for the younger generation, and I think where maybe the conservative side falls short is, let me just throw this at you. I think we relying so much on the founding and Constitution and kind of just echoing those things over and over and over again, I don't think I don't think younger generations identify with that. And I think we need to, if I say we, I mean people that are generally more conservative, need to find a better way to present the argument or the ideas, instead of always saying these old people a long time ago had values and the Christian value system, and this country was founded on Christian values, and when you stick to those, and when you stick to these old white people, I'm playing devil's advocate, right, old totally. White people, we need to do what these old white people did that had slaves and that occupied, and all these kind of things that they're categorized into. I think for the younger generations and groups like us need to figure out a better way to present the argument and present the ideas, because going back to that is, I think, a really
tough disconnect.
And it's playing into the hands of, well, yeah, all these people are nationalists, which in and of itself isn't that bad, but then you add white nationalists, and then you add all these terms from back in the day, and then we're all lumped into this category of, well, they're white nationalists, they're segregationists, they want borders everywhere, close everything down, we want a white society like it was founded. And I think it would behoove a lot of us in the younger generation to say, that was great, Christian values are great, we all believe in those, but here is why our positions, values, policies are better than the other side.
100%. No, and I completely agree with you. I think the question I would ask you is, where was the disconnect? Because you have my dad's generation, you have his parents' generation, where they kind of all were aligned with the values and the true values and the founding
even if
fathers.
They were Democrats or Republicans or whatever, they all had a common kind of baseline.
The sentence
John F. Kennedy
used to say was, I might not agree with you, but I'll defend your right to say what you want. That was the common thing liberals said for
exactly.
You. That's not what they say now.
Guys, JFK was a Democrat, and he's like one of the best and we all love him. And I mean, that's why a majority of blue collar Democrats are now Trump supporters, because of how the left has actually gone. But the question is where because even my generation, like, I'm all about the Constitution and the way that I was raised. But the reason why was because in school, every day in elementary school, I pledge allegiance to the flag. Like, we were raised of the true history of America. Now, there's a disconnect between, and I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. You cannot talk to someone that wasn't raised the same way that you were and expect them to receive what you're saying if they don't necessarily even believe it, or it's not their worldview. That's why I love PragerU. PragerU has actually done a really good job of taking, kind of making it in a way where it's very easy to understand it.
Yeah, with the little images and stuff.
They've got a lot of younger people, anchoring for them and doing some of the teaching that helps out a lot.
I think one of the ways we could get ahead of a lot of, I think it's, what's interesting is that it's happening for us already, because everybody that was independent or left, but not crazy left, is now being shoved into the right. Because they're like, no, I just said that all Trump supporters aren't evil. And they're like, what the hell's wrong with you? You can't say that. Yes, they are. And then they're just like, what? And then it kind of makes them come to our side. And one thing about this election is that we're, like what you're saying, Darren, is it's true. We could do something to reach across the aisle, but I still believe that we're the majority. And I think that's going to continue to increase, because oppression always works the same. If you tell people they're not allowed to say something, the human condition is, I really want to say it now. You know what I'm saying? That's the human condition, which is benefiting to us. That's why in China, the underground church that's in China that gets prosecuted so bad, they explode because they're not allowed to meet. And so it's just like, all right, well, now that's all they want to do. And so I think there's a component that's actually winning the argument for us is, watch what happens if you try to buy into their stuff. If everybody's a racist, then why ever talk to the other side? And then so what happens? But okay, so to answer your question, though, to actually give legitimate, how do we reach across the aisle better? I think it's highlighting that point and not appearing biased at first. It's highlighting the point that, do you like to say that, maybe China shouldn't have rounded up all the Uyghur Muslims and harvested their organs. Do you like being able to say that sentence? Do you like being able to say that they shouldn't put them in concentration camps? And anybody, left, right, center, whoever's going to go, well, yeah. And I go, awesome. We do too. We like saying whatever we want. So here's an opportunity to say what you want. Unfortunately, you have to agree with some of our founding fathers' documents about being able to speak freely. And I think it's just like showing them how it's uncomfortable in their life to have their rights stripped away and why they should value the rights because of that. I think it's a good bridge to help them kind of, when does it make you uncomfortable type of thing.
Let's be real here though.
Uh-oh.
The reason why we're at a tipping point of what, like, the tension, the riots, the anger. If something doesn't happen the next couple days, and our fears, like,
I do want to talk about that because there's a lot of stuff going around about tomorrow.
And this is a great segue because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, I've heard.
Man, there's some weird stuff going on.
There's some weird shit, and some of it makes sense. And I'm like, this makes sense. I don't know about this. I hope that's not true. You don't know, but let's just say, if because from a right perspective. I'll talk to me myself. I believe that Joe Biden is obviously, there's a shadow president behind Joe Biden. Joe Biden is slowly dying, and there are people that are talking to him and telling him exactly what to do. And if you actually really believe that the CCP is behind, the Chinese Communist Party is behind a lot of this stuff, then you have I think it's like 40%. They just pulled 40% of Republicans, which is about 35% of the nation, literally believe right now that we are under attack by China, and our rights will be you're looking at all the executive orders that Biden wants to do in the first, 3 days. It's unbelievable. And so we are going to have, if Biden is in for 4 years, and he gets to do everything that he wants to do,
or that they want him to do,
or what they want him to do, there is no conversation because and to be real with you, I would say that Donald Trump failed us, because if Donald Trump was in office for 4 years, and he could in the next 24 hours, if the Russia hoax, Obamagate, Ukraine, if all of this stuff is not declassified and everything that we've been told to believe, that's honestly scared the shit out of us and that has put anger towards what we're seeing going on in our country, then I actually feel that I've been lied to by so many voices that I've actually looked up to. And that goes for the guys like Flynn. That goes for, up to Trump himself, where you've had a man in office for 4 years, and you had not only that, you had the House and the Senate for the first 2 years. And I understand there's a swamp. I get all that stuff. But if you knew how bad it was, and then 4 years later, now we're screwed by big tech. We're screwed by the medical communities. And now we don't have a voice because we're all being censored. There is no conversation. What ends up happening next, and God forbid, is if people feel like they're losing their rights, their freedom, they can't talk, they're losing the First Amendment. What's next? The Second Amendment. You try to take away the Second Amendment, you're going to see blood in the streets. And I hate saying that, and I don't want that, and I condone all violence, but that is where you hear it. You hear people saying that. People are scared, and they're in fear. And so that is, if something doesn't happen, I don't know if there is a way to reach on the other side of the aisle, because there will be such a big echo chamber. Every single conservative will be silenced. You saw the Jack Dorsey leak from Project Veritas. Jack Dorsey is literally it's going to be a process. Over the next 2 years, we're just going to start slowly blocking every single conservative so that the same liberal Chinese agenda is the narrative for the entire nation to be pushed. And it's scary.
It is scary, dude. It's a precipice, man. You can't even look at this and think that there is not going to be a radical shift that's going to occur within the next 30 days. There will be a radical shift in which we'll either be like, well, damn, America was great, or we're going to be like, there's some justice going on with the military tribunals or something right now, because this don't make much sense any other kind of way.
I think I agree with what you guys are saying, but I also think we need to take a dedicated effort to strategize and be smart and be charismatic and think about things a little bit more methodically. I think, especially on the right, it's very boisterous. I kind of think that that's why Trump lost a lot of his maybe savor for people like me and some of the other Trump supporters that support him. I feel like what you were saying, Jordan, that maybe he failed us in some ways if he doesn't really reveal some of these things or let it kind of give us some tangible items. I think for me, some of his hubris, just pride, may have gotten in the way. I'm wondering what you guys think of that. Like, I think that maybe everybody really liked the first couple years. One of the reasons he got elected was it was kind of that I don't give a rip mentality. I'm going to take everybody on. I'm going to drain the swamp. I'm going to go after you. I'm going to go after you. I don't care who you are. His family, I don't know if you guys read Donald Trump Jr.'s book, his first one, but his family essentially ran that campaign. I mean, it was just this small group. Even, I think there's an article on Drudge, like, family came into office alone. Now they're leaving office alone. Like, it is a tight-knit group. They don't really need the outside. And what I'm kind of going through my mind, he was super popular in the beginning because of that attitude, and I don't know if it played out well down the stretch.
Well, I think if you look at that, you have to figure out why. We just got done talking about how media has their hands in every sentence that is said over the air.
Yeah, I would say I don't blame him, because from day one, get-go, it was attack on the guy. I understand.
Sure. The only thing I would push back is that he got 10 million
more voters
than 4 years before. I mean, that's literally
that's never happened in the history of the United States, and somebody not be reelected.
That's the really hard thing to reconcile is, I don't know if you guys remember, Biden did a live speech. Was it Thanksgiving? And it had like 1,000 people.
1,000, yeah, dude. Like even the live streamers. Like,
and
they're
I
not coming because of coronavirus. Bullshit. Exactly. They're not coming because they don't like him. Listen, nobody's even paying attention.
Well, so here's the thing: is that's the hard thing so a couple things to think about. Donald Trump surpassed Obama as the most admired person.
Yep.
Did you see that, right?
Yes.
Obama's hit it for the past 10 years. Obama is probably the polished, best kind of politician. Like, he is really good. And then Michelle has just swept away with it for the past forever, and she probably will forever. So to reconcile a couple of those things, okay, so Donald Trump he tied last year and surpasses Obama as the most admired person, and then he gets 10 million more votes, and then you put together things like all these rallies, all this stuff, and then Joe Biden gets 80 plus million votes, and this is
a joke. This
is where for me, that's where it lies, is things don't add up. Like, you take all the cases and stuff and things thrown out, whatever. I kind of feel like a bad move, not to deviate too much, and maybe this is part of the hubris I'm talking about, Donald Trump, is using some of the old guard like Giuliani and some of these, like, I mean, you're the president. Let's get out some young bucks that are fighters, that are wicked smart, and get after. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I sometimes I feel like maybe he was just a little too a little too arrogant, and just thought, well, we'll get this thing because essentially he's won every battle that's been thrown against him the past 4 years. Everything that's thrown against him, he's been able to.
Well, do you think?
The question is, what's going to happen? This conversation might be better in a week when we go, what really went down? Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, in a week, the military could have control of the D.C. Capitol and could be going, we're looking into everything. Nobody's president. Y'all chill out for a minute. You know what? There's so many options that could happen. If you really dive into what's possible with military occupation, there's a lot to say what Trump did or didn't do. But I agree with you. If a week from now nothing's happened and Biden's just floating by and everything's going, then I will say Trump, he fed us, led us to the slaughter, but worse than that, he made us all intuitively aware of how corrupt it was and then watched us get chewed out by that machine. That's how bad it would be. It would go down as the least. I will respect Trump no more if a week from now, if nothing's changed and Biden's just going about his merry business. Yeah. I'll be like, man, you didn't plan well for this. You didn't actually do anything that you were supposed to have done. You didn't reveal anything. All those speeches that Trump gave where he goes, I think you're going to like what happens. You wait and see. You wait and see. And then we waited and see. And what happens? The swamp got elected. And then they brought all their corrupt buddies in. And then they just smashed conservatives for 4 years. Bro.
I think.
Just
go ahead, Joe.
I mean, we've been waiting for how long? And at this point in time, is it not so evident that the masses of us, the noble patriots, whatever you want to call us, we know. Okay, so it's like, all right, buddy, like we're waiting on you. And again, we know this much of the whole pie, right? Yeah, sure. And I think part of it does come down to faith and trust. It is our responsibility as way showers, because we have an unequivocal knowing within, to hold the line. We are the resistance, to hold the knowing to that narrative. We can't just, oh man, it's been 7 months, forget about it. We have to hold that faith. And again, I think that boils down to a big divide in terms of left versus right. I know I'm kind of backtracking here, a little bit here, but the godlessness and just faith, I mean, come on. A lot of us believe in a man who parted the Red Seas, and he's not going to come until he's needed, in a sense, so it's just, how much longer can we wait? There's been times for me where I'm like, I'm fucking done. When is something going to happen? And again, there's so many of us. It's like, it's weirdly now the collective's responsibility to like out what's going on, to be like, all right, well, they're not going to do anything about it. Let's us do something about it. But what is that? I don't know. I don't have that.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that, because I'm like, I want to have faith and I want to have trust, and like maybe they're going to do something, but I also am not naive. And so I'm like, look, everybody's not a believer. And even if you are a believer in Jesus, part of the recipe that comes with eschatology, or meaning the study of end times, is that shit gets really, really bad.
Right.
And so you kind of have to throw that into the mix of what's possible. And you're like, well, I trust the Lord. And it's like, yeah, however, lots of the apostles were boiled upside down and hung on crosses. So it's kind of like sometimes in the Lord's recipe of like shit going good is shit going really bad personally for you. And so it's like, all right, as much as I think the Lord has used America and the United States to bring the gospel to all different types of places and to be a beacon of actual liberty and for no and persecution and things to be happening, that's good. But like in order for the end to come, things do have to get worse. But I just don't think it's time for that yet. And so I'm like, all right, I'm trying to trust my brain. If I and we, these 4 people, are having this discussion of, if I was Trump and everything that he said, or 50% of things that he said were true about the level of corruption, you're not going to make it for longer than a month out of office without them killing you, because you have 30 million Americans who are diehard going, there is corruption. We don't have a country anymore. Are we supposed to take up arms at some point? Like, you have to think of that. And if you're China and you've murdered millions of people in history, you're not going to be like, we're just going to leave Trump and let him go play golf. Trump has to know that. General Flynn has to know that. And so they have to be having this discussion 100 times in the past to go, what do we do? So the thing that I have faith and hope in is that Trump has self-preservation defense mechanisms. And the biggest self-preservation defense mechanism right now is to tell the truth about everything and to let justice roll out to some degree, not just hand over the baton and go, well, shit, guys, we tried for 4 years and that swamp was deeper than we thought, man, because that's a death sentence for him and his family. There's no way they're going to let them live if what we believe is true.
Well, I think he'll be just as loud of a voice if he can have some sort of a platform. Currently he doesn't. Yeah. So he might just have to start his own, or maybe Elon Musk or somebody's going to start their own. But I think what's really
JFK, he revealed less than Trump, and he's dead.
Yeah,
look at whoever else, and look at Martin Luther King Jr. He did less than showing how evil things can be. You know what I'm saying? Like if what we're believing is true, which is that there is an all-powerful group out there that is attempting to control the world through corruption and through money and through blackmail, and a lot of it has to do with China. That's a bigger revelation and a specific revelation that is more threatening to the machine than other stuff.
If Trump does not reveal that in the next 24 hours, we don't have a conversation about it anymore.
Right.
We just don't.
We won't even be able to talk about it.
So what are you expecting for him to reveal? Because what I always hoped is that he would pull back the curtain. One of the things I thought would have played well is if, instead of kind of this boisterous fighting attitude that kind of fell over the past week or two because everybody's waiting for the big reveal, it's like everybody's waiting. It's like a magician. We're all waiting. Take a card. It's going to be big. It's going to be big. It's going to be big. And then it's just like a mediocre trick. You're like, oh, I thought it was going to be big. Like, I've seen that before.
I mean, even listening to the Ghislaine, I know, Jordan, you and I listen, but I'm like, that was on this morning, the hearing. I'm like, nothing. Oh my God.
So what I kind of hoped would have happened several weeks ago was a real sit down, pull the curtain back, and really lay this thing out for everybody, for the country, and take more of a, look, I'm going to show you what's going on in an intellectual way, which is hard for Trump, but like in an intellectual sit down, let me show you, almost like the chalkboard thing, like, let me show you what's going on. This is what's happening. I don't care who or what side you sit on. This is what's happened. This is what is happening. And here it is laid out. And I'm going to advocate and push for election integrity, all those things. But I'm going to do it intellectually, and I'm going to show you data and all that kind of stuff. I think, in my opinion, it would have felt better with me instead of kind of this rah, stop the steal, elections rigged, all this stuff, won by a landslide, all these things. And you're like, okay, I want to believe you. I want to, because I see all these things, the big truck and the pulling him out of the bottom of the desk and all these things, these, you go to sleep and then boom, it shoots up 100,000 votes the next morning in just a few hours. I see all of it. Pull back the curtain so I can see it and I can kind of internalize it. And instead it was like, we won by a landslide, rah. And I just felt like maybe that was a calculated risk that just didn't play.
Or it was part of the plan. Or, because that is the other side of this that the conspiracy theorists that are labeled that anyway are basically saying. And that's the Q people, right? The Q people, which, just so you guys know, I've probably spent somewhere around 200 hours looking into that so I could objectively determine what I thought about it without people trying to tell me what I should think. And so you have Q, and then you have QAnon people. And QAnon people say dumb shit. But Q hasn't always said dumb shit. Q actually says a lot of things that have made a lot of sense over the years, that I've been following it and going, oh, okay, and stuff that they had no business knowing unless there was some kind of truth to the component. But here's what they're saying. They're saying that this was always supposed to end with the military in control because nothing else could be done because the civil courts were corrupted the entire time. They've been saying this for 3 years, that it always had to end in military tribunals. It always had to be where there was going to be legitimate military trials that couldn't be corrupted, and that it was going to be so bad for everybody that they wouldn't be able to walk down the street anymore was supposed to be the thing. Well, at this present moment, we have all of D.C. on lockdown. A lot of the state capitals in the U.S. are on lockdown. We've got not just National Guard. We have military who is inside of D.C. doing lots of these operations. We have they have mechanisms right now in D.C. that are defending against missiles, lots of them, which is not something that you could expect from a conservative uprising. We don't have missiles, and there's not like
that's the thing is. So let's just jump into that for a second. Obviously, the narrative would be that there was a storm on the Capitol where a few hundred people went into the Capitol, so now we need to lock down the Capitol and barricade everything, and that's kind of why. That's kind of that's what you're reading. That's the papers. It's the whole thing is like, well, a couple hundred people got into the Capitol, and one lady got shot, a cop got beat up and ended up dying, and that's really it. I'm sorry if you there's other people that died, but it was not associated with the actual breaking into the Capitol, as I understand it. Correct? It was one guy had a heart attack. One guy was home, and so you know what I mean. Just polling. They're just polling at stuff saying 5 people died.
Right.
Heaven forbid anybody die from anything. I mean, that's common ground, but it's just so. The narrative is that a few hundred people went in there, so now we need to lock it all down. Now, for any just reasonably open-minded person, look at some pictures and some videos of D.C. and ask yourself, is this to defend a couple hundred people from breaking into the Capitol? Like, this is so much bigger. I was talking to my wife last night, like, just racking my brain, like, what is going on here? This goes back to where we were first talking about conspiracy theorists. Like, this is like the buffet of conspiracies right here. This is like the Q road. All these things are like, holy crap, man. They've locked this place down. 25,000 troops? They're sleeping inside of the Capitol? Like, they're just all over the place, everywhere. They've got checkpoints. They've got missile defense systems. They've got MRAPs. They've got everywhere. All over the place.
They got tanks.
They got hackalipters or helicopters running all over the place.
And they have the Marine Ospreys.
Like, what is going on?
Well, and then you just saw that, and this is, I mean, I don't know who this is. You saw yesterday they graduated 2,000 of the National Guard to be marshals.
They deputized them as U.S. Marshals.
Thank you. What do marshals do?
Right, they arrest. They arrest and can charge, and the military has different rules about.
Okay, so let's just hit that. I know, Jordan, you posted some things that were interesting about, like people being arrested. Is this Lynn Wood that's talking about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean
I don't want to go down like deep down the road, but like just a quick premise of like maybe
the basic overview of what people
30,000 foot level.
Yeah, I mean the basics is starting, and they say anywhere it could be starting from really today through the next 24 hours to 36 hours. What we are going to be seeing. Well, this is really what it is. It is pretty intense.
It's a rabbit hole.
Do you want me to give the full overview do you want me to give the full overview from the NSA stuff?
Yeah, give it. Well, okay, I mean, you have are you talking about from the interview from last night?
No, from the NSA. So Q's been talking about that stuff for a long time, that basically we have it all, and that the military has been letting people do the different things while monitoring all of it with the NSA. Chris Miller was put into play recently. He's the head of basically everything right now that has anything to do with the military. And so everybody has to answer to him. Everybody has to answer to him right now. And he's obviously pro-Trump or whatever. And so the person they just put in underneath of him is also a loyalist to Trump, which is strange. And he has a lot to do with, he's the lawyer for the NSA. So that's why Pelosi was fighting back against it. So basically what the expectation is from the conspiracy world over the next 36 hours to 30 days is that there's going to be whether they let Biden go ahead and swear in or whatever, that will be like, all right, you committed the crime all the way. Now the arrests are going to happen, and they're going to start taking down every single one of the components of people that were cooperating with the Chinese, with the companies that were involved with helping to fund election interference. That's since Trump's executive order, that's a felony. He can seize all of your assets. That's Google. That's Twitter. That's Facebook. That's Amazon. That's, I mean, all kinds of things. So you've got basically 260,000+ sealed federal offense indictments right now that nobody knows what they're for. And they usually there's only 10,000 at a time. There's 260,000+ right now that are out there. And so the conversation that they've been having is that there's going to be a time frame. Blackouts are involved to some degree or whatever, where there's going to be mass arrest that's going to be happening for all of the things that's occurring. Well, there's big expectation that part of making sure that no one escapes would be a confinement system of some sort. And where are they doing that? In D.C. right now, to a degree that's never been seen in human history before, right. Where they're going. Apparently, there's a ton of military here. It's not just National Guard. They're not defending against conservatives that might be the uprising, and they're not. Maybe they're defending against the other side. Who seems to be in line with that? Well, Antifa and some of these left-wing people that are potentially going to be the antagonist on the floor do have an outside source that could be funding them. That person being China. They agree on all ideology, right? So then you start looking at it and you're like, okay, well, there's clearly a left and a right side here, and only one side makes sense to be defending to this level against, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's what they're expecting on the conspiracy side.
Right. So you had the conspiracy side, and I have never really gone that deep before until really these last couple of days, or really the last 6 weeks, because you have Trump. He signed, all this news comes. No one saw the 2018 executive order that Trump signed in 2018. No one even knew about it till like 6 weeks ago. He signs this executive order. Then you have the DNI report actually finally comes out 2 days ago. So when that report actually came out, the Director of National Intelligence releases the report to prove and say that China meddled in our elections. Now, everything that we've been hearing over the last 6 months to a year, that assets are going to be frozen and all of this stuff, now Trump has the legal right to actually do it because the executive order was signed. I waited, November 3rd. I'm like, okay, I think it was like December 18th was like the deadline. We're all waiting like, okay, it's at 45 days. Is it going to come out? Well, it never ends up coming out. So we're like, that's screwed. And then you hear rumors that it got delayed or whatever. Well, now 2 daz ago, 4 days before the actual inauguration, we get the report and it's signed by the DNI and it says China meddled in our elections. And so now that is what's fueling giving truth to the conspiracies that we've been hearing, because we've heard all this, but unless now we actually have Ratliff actually come out and say China meddled in our elections, and that is why I think that actually gives fuel and belief that something is going to happen. It's not just some hoopla, and then you got. I'm reading this right now. California, all coastal areas surrounded by warships around the perimeter. We have 40,000 troops inside Washington, D.C. We have ships on the coast. Like, there is some type of threat. This isn't for, this isn't for 1,000 or a couple hundred protesters that are supposedly going to take some.
Even if there was 50,000 protesters, they aren't coming from water.
No, seriously. And what was said last night in the link that I sent you, Ross. What the guy is saying is that China a lot of these troops are for that China has supposedly sent on. Actually, I don't even want to go into it. It's a lot, but there is a lot of reason to believe that something is up, because when you have the DNI report coming out 2 days before, you have Pompeo coming out and he's doing all these stupid little time-stamp Twitters every 15 minutes, and you hear all these damn rumors, and then he's hitting China, and like they're creating that narrative and they're giving us reason to actually believe in something. And so if it doesn't happen, then it's kind of like we're just left out to dry, and it'll be a really interesting story because we don't got a voice. We've been censored. Big tech is in control. 230 is never going to happen. And
they can just push fear of COVID to control everybody over the next 2 years, or whatever the next COVID's going to be. And then you're evil because you don't want to keep other people safe. And it's just more and more talons gripping around the freedom that we have. And it's like, it's getting overwhelming.
I personally kind of disregarded and pushed away the whole end times theology of Christianity. I really have in the last 3 or 4 years. It's rooted in my heart where I'm like, when it happens, I'm going to know it. But I've kind of just I'm done preparing for what we've been talking about for 2,000 years. Let's be real. Paul talked about it. The disciples talked about it. This is talking 2,000 years ago. We're still talking about the same damn thing.
Every generation
every generation's talking about this.
Yeah.
But when you start, coronavirus happens, and now I read a report yesterday that the plans that Biden is going to push in the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, the CEC, all these United Nation organizations, globalists, what they're saying in the policies that they're asking every single leader of their country is if people don't take the vaccine, You can't go to the grocery store. You can't go to the bank. You can't get on a plane. You cannot operate in society. And that is what people on the right are fearful of, or people that just want freedom in general and that's where that's where I'm kind of alluding to the end times thing. It's like the stage is kind of being set, or what I've been taught about my entire life and believed about. If you don't get something or don't do something that the government says in force, not by choice, you cannot be a part of humanity and society. And essentially you have to be in hiding for the rest of your life and go buy a farm to try to make your own food because you're screwed.
Right.
And,
it's an apocalyptic setting that's never been set before because there's not a way to push a reset button if America falls. There's not another chunk of land that we can all go to and go, well, let's try it here again. They control so much everywhere.
We're being programmed.
It's a communistic push, which has never happened because this is America. And when you see your right to choose being stripped away. Okay, so where I live here on the seacoast of southern Maine and New Hampshire, there is an executive order, right? And each town gets to, choose. So masks, there's signs everywhere. I've been harassed. I do not wear a mask. The reason why I do not wear a mask, obviously I've done my research. Just because I choose not to wear a mask does not mean, I'm not saying COVID doesn't exist, okay? SARS-CoV-2, all right? It says so on the back of my Lysol friggin' wipes, right? It's there. It just means that I choose not to prioritize fear over my liberty and my freedom and my life that's happening right now. That's it. To be ostracized for not wearing a mask, again, it's the cognitive dissonance. Dear people, rewind to 1 year ago. If you saw somebody at your local grocery store with a mask on, would you not think that person is sick? And just like that, it's reversed. You don't care about people. You are selfish because you don't have a mask. It's equally as fascinating as it is concerning because people are not thinking. And for me personally, I was in Hawaii last March. My trip came to an abrupt halt. I came back. I had a layover in Vegas. At this point, I'm like, I'm watching the news. Great, just get me home. Like, I don't even care anymore. Just get me home, right? So I got home. People in Vegas layover, they had the gloves, they had the mask. I'm like, I'm going to die. Here it is. This is the end of my life. I'm going to die. I get home. I'm not sick. I go away over the summer. I come home. I'm not sick. Shouldn't I be dead by now? Somebody who doesn't wear a mask. It's not fitting the narrative. Do your research. The Great Barrington Declaration. People won't take the time to read this. Watch Event 201. Well, you can't watch that because that's a conspiracy theory thing too, right? It's just, it is right in front of us. And people don't want to do it.
The scariest thing about the whole communism thing is that we've seen communist countries before. But what we're seeing right now is communism on a global level. And that to me is what's the scariest because, this agenda is being pushed on every single country. And we've never seen it before. And, what you're saying, right, Joe, is you're exactly right. I hardly ever wear masks personally. Obviously, if I go into a place, I've never gotten COVID, but I know a lot of people that have. I know a lot of friends that have had COVID and a lot of misinformation. I actually have to jet here in about 2 minutes, so I'm just giving you guys a heads up.
No problem. We can close up shop a little bit here anyway. We can do this again. I think it's useful to do this, and I think it'd be cool to try the hesitancy of doing something where we can open it up for people to jump on is crazy town people, like jumping in and but I think it'd be cool to have more of an open forum. I know, Jordan, you've done some live Instagram stuff that's pretty cool where people are on there. And just to start to create a community of people that actually don't agree on everything, but that have common values and common baseline thoughts and beliefs that we should all be able to agree on.
Just because we have different beliefs, it doesn't give you, I'm not talking to you, but you as a collective, just because we have different beliefs, it doesn't give you the authority to deem somebody as wrong or bad. And that is exactly what's happening. You don't agree with us, then you're wrong and you're bad and you're X, Y, and Z. It's just,
Well, it's a genius mechanism that they've employed based on, critical race ideology, and not just critical race theory, but
Color
just
revolution.
yeah, it's a color revolution, man. That's really what they've been doing. I follow George Soros' son, Alexander Soros, just so I can watch what the billionaires are attempting to get public to think. And it's amazing what I see on there, because it's like I'm looking at the pure nectar of what's the next move they're going to make to change the ideology of America. Following Alexander Soros, who runs the Open Societies, the nonprofit or whatever it is that George Soros gave $42 billion to. Instead of keeping the money for himself, he gave it to Open Societies. And then watching what they fund, all of the riots and everything, the people that are the Freedom Fund, getting people out of jail, whatever, they funded that. They funded so many strange things. So, but anyway, just watching it and seeing how they're able to say slowly, you're evil if you don't. It's not just you're different. It's evil. It's you're bad. And it gets to the point where you're not able, if you don't agree with them, you're evil. And it's just useful idiots again. That's all it is it's useful idiots parroting things that they don't know. And what's scary about all this is seeing how many people don't have critical thinking skills. That is the scariest thing that I've witnessed, is I'm going, oh my God, it really is this easy to trick millions of people. If you just repeat shit and act animated and so offended if someone disagrees with you, then people generally don't like friction and confrontation. So they'll just be like, okay, yeah, I'll agree with you. Let's just go the path that's least resistance. But
it's billions of dollars of propaganda.
Yeah.
It is.
That's why it's so easy now.
I think to close up here, Martin Luther King Day was yesterday, and I listened to his I Have a Dream speech, and some of his stuff is just super stirring. Obviously, the guy had his issues, but he was a tremendous leader. And what I thought about is the way our society is going is, instead of I have a dream of being something, of being somebody, of something special, like what his dream was super big. And it was so small, just, his children being with other races, things like that. But now our dream now is being mediocre. Like, I would never teach my kids, just be mediocre and let people give you stuff. Or let life just happen to you. And if it does happen to you and it's bad, then it's someone else's fault. We need accountability across the board. Rioters, whoever they are, everyone needs to be accountable for what's going on. And then dream. Be bigger than just getting your $600 check from the government. Push back. That's America. Like, push back against certain things you don't believe in. And then dream bigger. Don't dream this small. So anyway, that's kind of I think the narrative needs to change, especially younger. I'm an elder millennial, but younger generations need to change the narrative and say, dream bigger. Don't let the government make your dreams for you. Don't let
we push that to our children, to be different and be you and be unique and but where does that dissolve into adulthood? Because it does dissolve, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh no, I need to wear this, I need to eat this, I need to drive this, I need to do. It's like, says who, right?
Yeah. All right, guys, let's do this again. Let's. I mean, this is healthy. We have to talk about this kind of stuff. We got to keep moving and pushing, and we're all just ordinary people that need to get it out. Every time I do this, I feel better. I'm like, okay, I got something out.
No, this is therapy.
We're not crazy. Therapy. We're not crazy. That's the thing, man. Everybody's trying to act like what we think is crazy. It's like, y'all are crazy. We're like, I'll hang out with anybody, bro. Like, I'm not the racist one here.
After this, Joe, we all need to do some shavasana, or we all need to get down and do some yoga, man.
Seriously.
I seriously believe if people did more yoga and meditation, a lot of this would stop. And that's my honest belief.
Because again, we're living in a material, three-dimensional world where it's external, and yoga will teach you to turn in to find your answer. That's what it's about, right?
Just chill out, people.
Just chill. I gotta go, guys. I love you guys.
Peace out. See you later.
Yeah, have a good one.
Bye.